we're going to go through a handful of clauses here that are great to know for the oil and gas lease and your negotiation powers. So as I mentioned earlier, the royalty clause is typically the first thing that people think about after the bonus payment that's coming their way. So you can negotiate that royalty interest. A 1/8 royalty used to be the standard. And now, depending on the location you're in and where you're at in the country, you're more than likely to get closer to a quarter royalty, which is a lot better term for the mineral owner in the long run. Some places have force pulling and get you stuck at a 3/16 royalty if you don't respond in time. And so it's on the responsibility of that mineral owner or their management company to be on top of these situations and get in front of any pulling orders that could be presented. Pew clause, also known as a freestone rider, this separates the lease into separate tracts of land for the purpose of maintaining the lease. It can prevent the entire property from being tied up by an oil and gas lease by drilling just one well. So you want to be able to have this clause in your lease so that there is continuous development throughout a specified period of time, and before that property gets released back to you, and gives you the ability to go back and sign an additional lease, make more additional bonus money, and then renegotiate those terms and royalty interest. If this is something that was done years ago at a 3/16, you might now be able to get a 1/5 or a quarter royalty. Delay rental clause requires the lessee, usually the oil or gas company, to make payments to the lessor during the primary term of that lease. So this keeps the lease valid even if drilling or production has not begun. Next is the shut-in royalty clause. This is a clause ensures that the mineral owner, receives payment when a well is not producing. So the well's been shut in. It was producing for an extended period of time, but they shut it in. The operator did, due to the oil and gas industry as a whole, the price of the product that they're attempting to produce. And so they can shut it in for a specified period of time based on your lease language, so that, and they'll continue to pay you that shut-in royalty on a yearly basis, depending on the terms and conditions of that oil and gas lease. The addendum clause is next, and this clause defines the term of the lease, usually the primary term that I spoke of earlier, during which the oil and gas company must begin production, and then a secondary term that continues as long as the land is producing oil and or gas. And then you could also break it out by legal description or depth, severance if needed, if they don't continue to actively drill new wells. The warranty clause is next up to discuss here. We've got this talks about how you avoid, if it's included in the mineral owner warrants the land that they own and the mineral rights, they could be held liable if it turns out to be incorrect. So a lot of times, as a mineral owner, you want to strike this and make the oil and gas company depend on the title and their team to determine who owns the property. Damage clause. This clause outlines how much the oil and gas company must pay if their operations damage the property. So if you are the surface owner and the mineral owner, you have the ability to make additional money, like Blake said, for the operating company to come in and drill a well on the surface of your property, and they have to maintain it at the surface, the water sources, the livestock, the crops, and return it to its original condition, or as close as they can, depending on your oil and gas terms. Indemnity clause ensures that the lessee will protect the lessor from any legal actions or liability arising from the activities of the lessee or their subcontractors. So this is going to safeguard you from bearing any costs or damages related to the operations on that well or the land. Environmental protection is going to specify that the oil and gas company will adhere to all relevant environmental laws and regulations, and it also includes stipulations for the cleanup of environmental damage and restoration to that land. A couple more clauses that are great to get in your addendum or your oil and gas lease form and help negotiate during the negotiation process. I mentioned earlier depth severance. This clause will release any specific formations or deep rights on the lands covered by the lease back to the mineral owner after the primary term of your oil and gas lease is expired. A lot of times there'll be continuous development, clauses such as, for 180 days. If they haven't started drilling an additional well within that time frame after the primary term, then they're going to release all of the formations and lands not currently being produced, and it allows you to sign additional oil and gas leases and make additional revenue. No deductions clause has become a lot more used over the past 5 to 10 years. This is where you have the ability to prevent your lessee from deducting the costs they incur for transferring or marketing the oil and gas that they're producing from this property. So they have to eat those costs and not spread that out amongst your minerals and revenue on a monthly basis. And then another great one is the consent to assign language. So this is going to limit the lessor from assigning your oil and gas lease to someone after the fact. In the oil and gas industry, you've got a lot of people chasing permits and rig locations. And if they have the ability to get an oil and gas lease from a mineral owner at, say $500, they might try to go sell it for $1,000 down the road. So as a management company and a mineral owner, you want to make sure that you're getting the most money that you can bonus wise and royalty wise, and not leaving any meat on the bone there for a group to flip it to someone else and make a profit off your mineral interest in your oil and gas lease. There's a big play going on now with non-operated working interest and picking up these leaseholds, and so people are paying prime dollars per acre for a lot of leases out there, and you want to know at the end of the day that you're working with someone that's going to participate or drill the well themselves, and know that you're getting the most money you can for your mineral interest. And that's where the oil and gas lease management comes into play. Their oil and gas leases are more and more complex every year. On the management side of this, everyone thinks that they've got the best lease form out there, and they're not easy to manage. One's hard enough by itself, but if you've got multiple leases and terms, obligations, operators to deal with, tracts of land to manage, this becomes very complex, and not, it's not made for everybody. And so working with industry experienced staff helps make sure you're getting the best terms in your lease and that they're being adhered to by the operating company.